Hi guys, so first impression after the ride. I'll do a more detailed video after that, but really my first impressions. So as I mentioned in previous videos, the brakes suffer a lot. There is no way around that. You gotta upgrade the brakes. The stock brake with better brake pads, they don't do it for me. I'm using floating discs, 2 or 3 floating discs, which should help with heat dissipation and so on, but I was still overheating. So I reckon that it's not a great solution so far. We need to find a better solution if you want to go bigger in terms of tires. Just making sure my pack doesn't fall. The other thing I would notice is your headstock bearings. So mine started to get loose and rattle, and obviously my fault. I set up those Fox 40s by myself a week ago. I haven't ridden them before. It wasn't clear to me, but I think what I did wrong is where you insert the bearing, you're supposed to insert a plate underneath that lifts the bearing a little bit so it sits in the cup properly. And I think the plate that I inserted, that I got from a surround kit, that bottom plate that goes between the triple clamp and the bearing is too thin. So I think I need to change that to a longer one, so the bearing sits slightly higher on that rod and essentially fits properly into the cup. The other thing I noticed is around suspension. So there's a lot of unsprung mass, there's definitely different suspension settings to be played with. I pumped my fork, so I've got Fox 40 float. I pumped them to 90 psi instead of the 70 that I had originally, a 76 I think. Pumped them to 90. It doesn't make a lot of difference, and when you roll through obstacles, it actually just doesn't feel the best. And the other thing is, when you're going through obstacles, you got to roll the throttle and keep the throttle pin and lift the front wheel up to go through obstacles. And if you do that, the wheel bottomed out on the mud guard. So essentially the mud guard is not in the right position, which I knew already. Like, a lot of people said that's not going to work, you're going to bottom out. But on the stock wheels, I've never had an issue. And I jumped with the bike previously. With the setup as it is right now, not only you can't jump, but you can't just do basic obstacle crossing without risking to bottom out the forks. The other thing I noticed was so grip was definitely better. I'm worried the components are gonna get beaten though, because they're mountain bike components. They are lighter, but they're also less strong, and I can see why it is important to get like a motorcycle or a motocross or an enduro, just because of the quality of the components, you know, thicker brakes, thicker handlebars, thicker everything. So in these hard conditions, you need something that's gonna last, and it's taken a beating today, and I don't know how much longer I'll be able to do that. The other thing is power. So I noticed at about 35% battery, the power dropped, which is normal. But given that you already have a lot of weight, and I'm running a 60T rear sprocket, as at 35, when it's dropping power, you're starting to become like a mountain bike where you genuinely don't have a lot of power. And it's not really nice to ride. I mean, small areas or not, it's still not good enough to ride, I reckon. So if I was to keep this setup, and if I was to do enduro riding, I'd be doing most likely an upgrade on the controller and the battery. The other thing is, so power I talked about a little bit. Yeah, I forgot. So regen's the other thing that's weird, because you've got a lot more mass, you feel a lot less the regen, and as a result, it changes the way you ride the bike, because you can't rely so much on the engine braking anymore. And on top of that, you've got heavier mass, which makes your brakes not work. So it's a total different thing, I guess, to get used to. So you got less braking ability, you got less engine braking ability, So it's not great, especially when you're going super steep hills. Like I was gonna do a video and post it where I completely failed, but part of it is because I can't stop the bike. So I know you're supposed to keep momentum anyway when you're rolling down hills, but A, when you don't have the brakes to stop, it just stuff with your brain, and B, because it's such a lighter bike, every obstacle you feel that in the chassis, in the suspension, in the handlebars, a lot more than a heavier bike. So that's great from that point of view, because you get a lot of feedback from when you ride, a lot more than a normal petrol bike. So I really appreciated that part of the setup, because like literally you feel the front flexing, you feel the chassis flexing, you feel the swing arm flex. It's almost unnatural, because you're like, oh, is my wheel misaligned? Has something moved? So my point was, when you're going down hills on the rocky stuff, you get a lot of feedback, but you also get a lot of movement, I guess. So the front end shakes a lot, moves a lot, it pushes you in different directions. You can't really just focus on the point you want to go and drive the bike. I mean, you can if you're a good rider, I guess. I can definitely do that on an enduro bike a lot better than I can on the electric bike, funny enough. But I think it's also a confidence thing. Once I get more confident, I'll probably carry more speed that will allow me to drive where I want to go. At the moment, carrying speed means having the confidence in the brakes and mean having confidence in my setup, and that's the first time I rode this bike with these wheels. There's a lot of modifications to it, so I just wanted to be super careful that nothing breaks, gets misaligned, or breaks on me. That's the first time really, so I'll be really keen to see the wear on the components after this. So other than that, I mean, jumps, I've got a 550 pounds at the rear. It's perfect for my weight anyway, so the rear felt absolutely great. The amount of traction I get from that tire was epic. So even more than a normal petrol or enduro bike, moving your body on the bike makes a heap difference. And to chase grip when you're going up hills or muddy ruts, like today I had clay, wet clay that was just very, very gnarly. Just a lot of grip. That's definitely something I would have not been able to do with the stock Talaria. Even with better tires, I reckon I wouldn't have been able to. What else? So the riding position, I mean, I've got a riser, Ergotech risers, and I also have a direct mount now with the Fox 40s that are slightly offset, so they are a bit higher and they offset to the front of the bike. I found that when I sat up on the bike, still not high enough, especially when it's just shaking, moving, going through rocks and stuff. It still feels like sometimes you fall on the front of the bike. So that would probably be my only comment, because the bike itself now with this setup, the dimensions of the bike, it feels like a dirt bike. Like if anything, there was places where I would stop, like climb, get through a rock, stop, and then I'll tippy-toe trying to lean the bike so that I can actually touch the ground. So it definitely is the same height, if not higher, than an MX bike now. However, the geometry is wrong. Like you've got a taller bike but you've got the direction that's still too low. So that's kind of awkward. I need to probably rise it even more, I guess. But it's adding spaces on top of spaces on top of spaces. I think it's grid shift makes a great direct mount with a riser. I might end up trying that, I don't know. What else? The other thing is, so weight, obviously that adds a lot of weight to the bike. At 100% battery, it's a blast. At 50% battery, it's still good. At 30% battery, then it's just no good. But consider this: if you want to use this bike as an enduro bike, not only you gotta have tires that will allow you to grip, but you also have to wear boots, right? Motocross boots. They're not heavy. You gotta wear an armor, body armor. That's not heavy. That's not light. You gotta wear knee braces if you're serious about it. That's not heavy. That's not light. So all of that combined, that's a lot of weight to the bike, like pretty much the same weight that I have added to this bike with those tires. I think from memory, we were looking at 6.5 kilos to 7 kilos more with those tires on the bike. So can't remember the math, but I think it was something around 15 or 16% of the total weight of the bike, which is huge. And then on top of that, you add gear, which again is at least another 6 kilos, 6 to 8 kilos, maybe 6 kilos. Let's not put 8 kilos, but those boots are heavy. The knee braces are heavy. The armor, okay, it's not that great. A helmet. So you're adding a lot of weight on the bike, and when you've got full power with a 60T, it's okay. But as the power drops down, it's just way too much for this bike. I pushed as far as I could in terms of battery, so I think I've got 14% left or 12% left. I could have gone a little bit more, but I just don't take the risk. I managed to do about 30 kilometer on the full charge. It's definitely not a lot. That's pretty much 50% less or 40% less than what you'd expect on a stock bike, so that's a lot. But 30 Ks of enduro hard stuff is more than enough. Like I was gone at 6, I was on the trail at 7, maybe 7:15 a.m. and I left at 9:30 a.m. So a good 2 hours of riding, 2 hours. So from that point of view, I can't complain. Honestly, that's enough. That's enough for the type of riding I do. That's clearly not enough if I was to go with my mates and go do the riding that I used to do before, like 50, 60 kilo or 100K loop in a day. Nah, forget it. That's not gonna work. The 2 hour ride, usually when I go super early and I do a 2 hour ride. That's just allowing me to do that. But the last 30%, like I said, it's just a nightmare. It's not fun. So really, realistically, you get 70% of your battery of proper riding, and then the other 30% are just, I guess, the way home, on your way home if you're going pretty far. So that definitely changes the way you see enduro and the tracks that you ride and how you ride them, because I would probably next time go a different track, and on my way back not hit all the trails, but actually leave the way back. So go further, but on the way back just take the single trails instead of going back. What the fuck is he doing, this guy? Yeah, so I'll probably much do that instead. What else? What else? I lost the front on a rut, on a wet rut, which happens obviously on mountain bikes as it happens on electric bikes and dirt bikes. If it's on a mountain bike, as you know, you're gone, and these are very dangerous. If you're on the dirt bike, when that happens, you're gone as well, and you're gone for good because of the weight of the bike. So when that weight starts to get uneven and the tire starts to slip, there is no, well, you can catch it, but it all depends what speed you're doing. With this bike, I could catch it. No issues at all. It happened. I was shit with the 21, but as soon as I put my foot down, the bike, because it's so light, you can really afford to doing that. So for me, that's come back from injury. It's my first ride in 2.5 years, maybe more. I was scared to go back on the bike, and you know, having those situations happen to me, it puts you in confidence right away. The reason it does is because you just have a lot less weight. And when you come back from injury, what you want to do is rebuild confidence in the bike, right? When you rebuild confidence on a more powerful, more heavy bike, well, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. You gotta measure what you're doing. You gotta, commit. And to commit, you gotta be sure. And when you're not sure, you're coming back from injury, then you don't do it. So as a result, the time for recovery of your injury on a normal bike is a lot longer. On this bike, I think I'm pretty much back. I might need another ride, but by the end of my ride, I was like, okay, I've got the feeling again. I've got the traction feeling, I've got suspension feeling. I can feel the frame, I can feel the brakes, the rotation with the switch brake acceleration. I could feel all that coming back. And if I was to jump on a petrol bike now, I'd probably be a lot more confident. If anything, probably too confident. So that's from a recovery point of view. If you're like me, you broke your leg a few times, or you've got an issue and you're healing from it, and you're strong enough but not confident enough yet, or you need to heal longer, but you just want to get back on the bike, that's the perfect tool for that. And then I started to hear at the end my chain making noise, and what happens is with my chain and this setup of a bike, it's really tricky, because you can only have so much length on the bike before the tire knob hit the linkage, and it's too close to the linkage, or it's too far and the chain, you can't find the right length of the chain. So essentially, if I push the wheel all the way back and everything is clear, my chain is too slack, and if I remove a chain link from that, the chain is too close. So the adjustment is really not it's not a lot of adjustment there, and unfortunately I had to do a bit of a dodgy thing, and my chain is way too tight. Not tight that it would snap, but too tight. When you go ride the bush and obstacles and so on, you absolutely want slack in the chain, and I really don't have much. And I was hoping that it would stretch by my ride, but it looks like it hasn't. So I'm actually thinking that I might have to look at a different sprocket to try to get the right perfect dimension, I guess, to fit the tire. Which again, I'm not gonna do that again, and I don't recommend you do that either. This is way too big, 140, 80, 18. Too big, too complex to fit, not a lot of play with the chain, all the components suffer. I honestly wouldn't go back to it, and I don't recommend you do. But if you're like me and you're looking at this video because you really want to understand if you can go take your bike enduro, and if you would consider putting the money towards that, or no money, but actually ride it just with bigger wheels and see if it would do the job, then it would. But honestly, the difference in traction between a 140 and 100 is negligible, I think. I mean, yes, the terrain today was pretty wet and pretty muddy, but I don't think it would have made a massive difference if I went 100 instead of 140. It would have still made a big difference compared to the 80, but definitely not to the point where you'd have to worry about it. So I guess that's my feedback so far. I can't think of anything else at the moment. It's all fresh. I'm just coming back home. I'm going to wash the bike. It's taken a beating for sure. The bike is covered in dielectric grease. I went through mud, through puddles, through water. I was like, this time around I'm just going to give it a really good go and see if it breaks. So I can tell you it doesn't. So that's a good sign. But please make sure that you take your controller and all your componentry apart, and that you coat it with dielectric grease before you do what I've just done today, because you may find that you're going to have issues if you don't do that. And I would really hate for you to look at this video thinking, oh yeah, I can take my bike, and then break something because the water on yours didn't, went through the wrong component. So I hope you appreciated that video. I hope that was helpful. And I might do another one in the shed to show you the wear, and maybe if I'm not happy with this one, do another one. But if you have any questions or anything else you'd like me to test, feel free to shoot me a PM or comment on this video. Thank you very much. Have a good day.